Silverstone Circuit, March the 24th, 1985. An important day in the annals of motor racing history because it saw the birth of Formula 3000. The Cosworth V8, with over 150 Grand Prix victories to its name, provides the driving force, but fitted to even lighter, faster chassis than in Formula 1. Those chassis come from Rolt, designed by the evergreen Ron Toronac. March, who entrusted their works team to Mike Earl's Onyx operation. The French AGS factory with this beautifully crafted carbon composite car. And Lola, who drew on successful IndyCar experience in developing their Type 950. Modified Grand Prix cars were also used with examples of Williams and Tyrrell, who were the last to use the Cosworth in Grand Prix racing and whose Type 012 needed very few changes for Formula 3000. The driver turnout was truly international. From France, Michel Ferté driving a March for the Oreca team. His elder brother Alain Ferté in the works Lola. And Philippe Streff, winner of the last ever Formula 2 race. Italian names included the talented 23-year-old Emanuele Pirro, driving an Onyx March, Gabriele Tarquini, former world champion in karts with his San Remo March, and the experienced Lamberto Leone in one of the Formula 1 Williams cars. From New Zealand, reigning Formula 2 champion Mike Thackwell, leading the Bridgestone Rolt team. And from Denmark, his teammate, John Nielsen. From Germany, the tall, determined and very rapid Christian Danner in the BS Automotive March. This is Scotland's racing aristocrat Johnny Dumfries driving another Onyx March. And in the blue and yellow of Sweden, Thomas Kaiser. From Switzerland comes the determined Mario Heighton to drive one of the Lolas. And from Belgium, Thierry Tassin driving the other Richard de Villa prepared Williams. And representing Brazil was the talented Roberto Moreno in the Baron Tyrrell team. For that opening round at Silverstone, the weather played its part. The gamble on the grid was whether to start on wet weather tyres or dries. Michel Ferté made a last-minute change to wets, so did Thackwell alongside him. Most of the rest were on slicks, but when the lights went green, the road was still very wet. From the second row, it was Pirro's slick-shod March that was the first leader of the first Formula 3000 race, but Silverstone specialist Thackwell was on his tail. Off to the right goes Alessandro Santin's March, the first victim of the slippery surface. At Maggot's Curve, Thackwell is already challenging for the lead, and he goes through. Pirro is still second, and in third place, Danner ahead of Moreno's Tyrrell. Well down is John Nielsen in the other Rolt after a slow start. Michel Ferté has made a slow start from the front pole position, but he's already starting to come through and challenging Pirro. At the chicane, Thackwell's out on his own already, plumes of spray. Danner is second. There's Michel Ferté in third place now, ahead of Pirro. And Moreno is next up in the Tyrrell. Thackwell, who knows all about driving in the wet at Silverstone and has won the international trophy twice before today, settles down to a storming but very tidy drive. But up into second place comes Ferté, forcing his way past Danner. So now it's Rolt first, March second, March third. Further back, behind Tassin and Langes, Tarquini spins his San Remo March. But he keeps out of everybody's way and carries on. Not so lucky as Johnny Dumfries. He abandons his car out on the circuit. And now Michel Ferté makes his move. On a now drying track, he gets inside the twitching Mike Thackwell Rolt at the chicane and puts his March ahead to take the lead. But while Michel's Avons seem to work better on the drier track than do the Bridgestones on Mike's Rolt, as Thackwell looks at the sky, he can see that more rain is on the way. The umbrellas go up again in the crowds, and the heavens open. and Thackwell goes one side then the other to find his way past the weaving Ferté march. As they come up to Woodcote, lapping Pirot's march, Thackwell gets his revenge. It's been a race of tyre changes, and although these cars are all on wet weather tyres, some of them are still on slicks, including Roberto Moreno, who executed this magnificent spin at the chicane and barely lost half a dozen seconds. Less lucky was Michel Ferté. He got the chicane wrong too and severely damaged the front of his car. But he never had any thought of giving up his pursuit of the leader. So Thackwell motored on, and now his own teammate, John Nielsen, had come up into a distant second place. It was a Rolt 1-2, a magnificent start for Ron Toronac's team. The battered Ferté March still got third place, with Danner, Tarquini and Moreno all a lap behind. It was Thackwell's third Silverstone International Trophy win, and he was very happy to be the first Formula 3000 winner.
I knew today that there were showers about, and I thought, well, it's got to be wet, you know, you can't do anything about it. I tried to outsmart Ferté and hoped that he wouldn't cotton on and change too, but he did. But it turned out all right.
So Formula 3000 had had a first-class debut, despite the weather. And 2 weeks later came the second British round at Thruxton. Once again, rain before the start confused the choice of tyres, but pole position man Mike Thackwell was on the right choice of slicks. However, the best start came from that white car going round the outside of everyone in Tarquini, and at that point he clipped the front of the Rolt, and you can see that Thackwell's front nose wing is bent. Sliding off, that's Roberto Moreno in the Tyrrell going backwards out of the race. One corner later there was another problem for Johnny Dumfries. That's him in the white Onyx March spinning harmlessly out of the way. Tarquini made a mistake somewhere around the back of the circuit as well, because the battle for the lead was between Michel Ferté and Thackwell as they came into the chicane, and it was Ferté who went ahead. Thackwell's bent nose cone was worrying him because Thomas Kaiser also went through into second place. So Michel Ferté on wet weather tyres is the leader. Thomas Kaiser, doing tremendously well, is in second place, and Thackwell is dropping back in third place with Pirot behind him. Thackwell's heading for the pits. He has to change his battered nose section. And so Ferté goes on his way out in front, while Thackwell is in the pits. But no sooner is Thackwell out than teammate Nielsen is in. He too has damaged the front of his car. Now Ferté's worried about tyres because the track's almost completely dry, so he has to come in to swap his wet weather tyres for a set of slicks. Sweden's Thomas Kaiser briefly has the lead, but then Emanuele Pirot, who started the race on slicks, is through. The Italian builds up a tremendous lead, but it's Mike Thackwell after his earlier delays who comes storming through, disposing of Michel Ferté without difficulty. As the cars go on to their penultimate lap, there are only two back markers between the leader Pirot and the second placed man Mike Thackwell. Coming up the fast section to the chicane, working their way through the back markers, John Nielsen in number 2, the teammate of Thackwell who's being lapped by the leader there, and at the back of the traffic queue it's Mike Thackwell. They're now coming up to start their final lap. The two white cars to be lapped are the marches of Tarquini and Lang. And Lang is having severe handling problems, which makes his car very hard to pass for Thackwell, but the determined Thackwell's going to force his way by as they come up to the Campbell, Cobb and Seagrave complex. Thackwell gets on the inside of Lang and goes round the front of him as Lang spins harmlessly out of the way. But although Thackwell started this final lap only 4/5 of a second behind the leader Pirot, there is now another back marker between them, Mario Heiton's Lola, and Thackwell's task looks impossible. On up the 160-mile-an-hour drag to the chicane, and the cool Emanuele Pirro seems to have the race in his pocket. Thackwell's determined to get past Heighton, though. He doesn't do it before the chicane, and he has to be content with second place. Once again, the third man is Michel Ferté, with Kaiser fourth, Tarquini fifth, and Danner sixth. If Tarquini hadn't clipped Mike Thackwell's nose at the very start, it might have been very different. But nevertheless, Thackwell is the championship leader after 2 rounds with 15 points, and Pirro is in second place now with 9 to Ferté's 8. But there are still 10 races to go. So to round 3, and for the first time, Formula 3000 is supporting a round of the Formula 1 World Championship, because we're in Estoril for the Portuguese round. And once again, it's Mike Thackwell on pole position with the Rolt. This time, there's no sign of rain. His own teammate is alongside him, John Nielsen, to make it an all-Rolt front row. Third fastest on the inside of row 2, it's Michel Ferté with the fastest of the marches. Fourth and fifth fastest, the 2 San Remo marches, with Alessandro Santin in number 14, slightly quicker than Tarquini in number 13. Then comes Alain Ferté with the large-looking Lola, and well down after engine problems in practice, Emanuele Pirro in March number 9. At the start, Thackwell is the first to move, going straight into the lead. And watch for Emanuele Pirro getting on the grass as he tries to make up for his lowly grid position. It's Thackwell from Nielsen with Ferté third. And already Thackwell is pulling out an enormous lead. In fourth place, it's Tarquini, just ahead of Santin. Thackwell's using every inch of the road to draw out an enormous lead. Nielsen, meanwhile, is keeping the opposition back from the team leader. But Thackwell's glory is not to last long. As Nielsen holds second place, ahead of Ferté and Tarquini, suddenly, Rolt's number 1 slows. Nielsen goes through to lead. Ferté is now second, Tarquini third, and back in fourth place is Roberto Moreno in the Tyrrell. Into the pits comes the unhappy New Zealander. Electrical problems are diagnosed. And the battle for second place is well and truly joined. Tarquini goes ahead of Ferté. Then Ferté fights back down the long straight. Wheel to wheel. Ferté takes second, and Tarquini tries to get it back again before hanging back for braking to the long corner at the end of the start-finish straight. While Nielsen leads, Pirro is coming through, and he snatches fourth place from Moreno in the Tyrrell. So Nielsen reels off the laps, securely in front with the Bridgestone shod Rolt, coming through to take the checkered flag all on his own and score his first Formula 3000 victory. Ferté gets second, Tarquini third, with Pirro rewarded with fourth place ahead of Moreno and Gruyard. Nielsen prefers to drink the champagne rather than spray it, but he does share it with Michel Ferté. And Tarquini gets his swig too. After 3 races, it's really close at the top of the championship points table, because John Nielsen and Mike Thackwell are now equal first with 15 points. Ferté is 1 point behind in second place, and Pirro is only 2 more points down. From Portugal, the teams travel to Germany and the Nürburgring. But the weather really doesn't look like motor racing weather at all. There's thick snow all the way around the circuit, and the drivers are left to making snowmen and having a snowball fight to pass the time. Dumfries gives Pirot a ride, and Danner throws the head of the snowman at Nielsen's feet. If the race had taken place, then skis would have been better than wheels, and one man who came along to have a look was Austria's Franz Klammer, perhaps one of the greatest skiers ever. As it was, the disappointed teams packed up and headed south from the snow to the heat and sunshine of Italy and the Vallelunga circuit near Rome. Once again, it was Mike Thackwell in Rolt number 1 on pole position, but Michel Ferté was alongside in his march, watched over by his French entrant Hugues de Schonac. On the second row, John Nielsen in Rolt number 2, and on the outside of the second row, very much the local hero, Emanuele Pirot with his march, and he was the man that the Italian crowd had come to see. At the start, it was Michel Ferté who got away first, with Thackwell, Nielsen and Pirot breathing down his neck, 4 red and white cars all together. In 5th place, Christian Danner, and 6th, Philippe Streiff. Through the tight infield section, Ferté concentrated on keeping the door firmly shut in Thackwell's face, but the rest of the field were tremendously close all the way down the field. Behind Streiff, Leone was 7th, Tarquini 8th, Santine 9th, and Johnny Dumfries was running in 10th place, ahead of Capelli and Grillard. A little bit of daylight behind Ferté, but he couldn't relax because under braking, Thackwell was right up with him once again. Behind the leading pair, Nielsen was still in 3rd place, but under equal pressure from Pirot in 4th. And on this abrasive surface on this hot day, it seemed that the Avon tyres were going to have a slight edge over the Bridgestones. Thackwell almost alongside that time, but once again as they go into the tight left-hand hairpin, he has to hang back. Behind the red and white quartet, still Danner is 5th, still Streiff is 6th, and behind 7th man Leone, Capelli has come storming up into 8th place. Round the back of the circuit, the battle goes on, and still there's nothing that Thackwell can do. In fact, he's dropped to 3rd place now, behind his teammate Nielsen. Dumfries has a moment as he runs over the curve in march number 10. Nielsen can't seem to do anything about Michel Ferté either, so it's still march, Rolt, Rolt, march at the front. And as they accelerate away from the hairpin, Leone is going slowly in 7th place, and we've lost Capelli. That's the result of a collision between the two, which has torn off Leone's rear wing, but has also launched Capelli into the air, into an accident that completely destroyed his car, but fortunately left him unhurt. Ferté still the leader, Nielsen still in 2nd place, Thackwell a very close 3rd, but it's now that Pirot starts to make his move. Number 9 goes ahead of number 1, and Pirot is 3rd, Thackwell is 4th. Danner's still there in 5th place, Ferté still leads, but now the march is up into 2nd place. Nielsen has also been passed by the flying Italian. So it's now march 1st for Ferté, march 2nd for Pirot, Rolt's 3rd and 4th for Nielsen and Thackwell. And as they come up to pass a back marker, Pirot goes very bravely onto the dust and somehow comes out of the right-hander but follows in the lead on his home circuit. Once Pirot has got ahead of Ferté, he pulls away. A superb effort which took him just in a few laps from 4th place to the lead. And bad luck for the Rolt team. Thackwell, running in 4th place behind teammate Nielsen, had to take avoiding action when Nielsen had a moment and put himself into the barriers. And then Ferté runs out of luck. His engine dies with an electrical fault. So now Emanuele Pirot is really out on his own. Nielsen is in 2nd place, Danner 3rd, and there in the foreground, is Capelli's destroyed car after his accident with Leone. So Emanuele Pirro comes home to the applause of the local crowd to his second Formula 3000 win of the year. John Nielsen takes second place by the narrowest of margins from Christian Danner, who is third. Griard is fourth, Streff fifth, and Johnny Dumfries sixth. And that means that there's still a tie at the top of the championship table because Nielsen and Pirro are joint leaders on 21 points, with the unfortunate Thackwell still third with 15. Next stop, France, and the beautiful road circuit of Pau. Brimful of confidence from his Vallelunga win, Emanuele Pirro takes pole position. But Mike Thackwell is up there on the front row as well. Third fastest is Michel Ferté in March number 3. And fourth fastest, brother Alain, not in a Lola this time, but in a March for the Cobari Italia team. It's this battle between the Ferté brothers that the French crowd have really come to see at Pau. With the Pyrenees Mountains in the background, the crowd await the start of 72 laps round this tight road circuit. And at the start, it's Pirro who takes the lead from Michel Ferté, Thackwell and Nielsen. Alain Ferté is fifth. It's a very tight squeeze round that first right-hander, but Pirro comes out in front, ahead of Michel Ferté and then the two rolls. On this circuit, which makes some parts of the Monte Carlo track even look quite wide and quite open, overtaking is very difficult, but in the high-speed queue at the front, Pirro, Ferté, Thackwell and Nielsen are almost nose to tail. Then Pirro comes through on his own. There's no sign of Thackwell, and Michel Ferté is missing too. What's happened is that Michel Ferté has spun and taken Thackwell with him. Thackwell's car is badly damaged and out of the race, although Michel Ferté is able to restart further down the field. So now it's Pirro versus Nielsen. But then Pirro comes through on his own. Nielsen has gone off. And now in second place it's Alain Ferté in number 22. But the man to watch is the German Christian Danner. He's come up into third place, and before long, he's on the tail of Alain Ferté and challenging. Now Pirro is starting to slow, and Danner gets up to second and then attacks for the lead. He comes through in front. Pirro is demoted to second place, with Alain Ferté third. Danner is leading a Formula 3000 race for the first time, and he stays there to score a splendid victory. Pirro nurses home his overheating March to take second place, but gearbox trouble sidelines Alain Ferté, and it's Lamberto Leone who takes third place ahead of Griard and Streff. And in attendance in the victory celebrations is none other than Alain Prost, who takes a ride round with Danner on the victory car. From Pau, the Formula 3000 circus moved north to Belgium and to the beautiful Spa-Francorchamps circuit in the Ardennes forests. Michel Ferté took pole position this time in his March, and alongside him was the other Ferté brother, getting used to his new March now. Behind the Fertés, on the inside of the second row, Mike Thackwell with the Rolt, and Emanuele Pirro on the outside of the second row with his March. Philippe Streff came next with the AGS, and Christian Danner, fresh from his first victory, was on the outside of row 3. There'd been a lot of controversy at Spa over the new road surface, which was breaking up in qualifying, and the Formula 1 teams had gone home, but nothing was going to stop the Formula 3000 cars from racing. The two Ferté brothers were ahead from the start, with Michel leading Alain. Emanuele Pirro was in third place ahead of Philippe Streff, and Mike Thackwell was down in fifth place. The only Belgian in the race, Thierry Tassin, was determined to do well here at Spa, and already he was up to sixth place ahead of Christian Danner. All the way round the track it was very, very slippery indeed. But Michel Ferté had pulled out a big lead ahead of Alain at the end of the first lap, with still Pirot, Streff and Thackwell following ahead of Tassin. The battle for third place between Pirot and Streff reached magnificent proportions, with the two of them side by side and banging wheels all the way around the track. Thackwell had a grandstand view but was determined to keep out of the way. This battle only ended when both of them got into trouble, got on the rough stuff and damaged their cars too badly to continue. The next man to fall foul of the slippery surface was the leader, Michel Ferté. Amazingly, during this incident, he kept the car pointing in the right direction, but the car had been too severely damaged for him to continue. So brother Alain was now in the lead. And in second place, Mike Thackwell. Tassin was the next in trouble. He too was out. More fortunate was Alain Ferté. He spun, clipped the barrier, and Mike Thackwell went by while that was going on, but at least he was able to restart in second place. So now Mike Thackwell had the lead. His cautious opening laps had paid off dividends. And in fact his teammate, John Nielsen, came through to attack Alain Ferté and take second place. But it was pretty slippery for Nielsen too. That was almost a spin, but not quite. Nielsen continued, still with his second place, but it wasn't for long. His engine cried enough, and the Dane was out of the race. So Thackwell was able to romp home by an enormous margin to win the race in Spa and triumph over the very difficult conditions. Last time through the hairpin, he was still using maximum power. So a very mature win for a very experienced driver, and Alain Ferté was almost as delighted with his second place as if he'd won the race itself. Christian Danner was third, Gabriele Tarquini fourth, ahead of Dacco and Fangio. With so many people falling foul of the track surface, how difficult did Mike Thackwell find it?
It was okay. It was what we expected. You know, the track surface was going to break a bit, but it stayed consistent, didn't get any worse from the first lap to the last, so same for everybody. You know, you drive to the track, and half the guys, unfortunately in 3000, decided to go like hell at the start, and you just can't do it when the track's like that.
Well, one of the rewards of Mike Thackwell's very mature drive was to re-establish himself in the championship battle, because with Pirot still leading, Thackwell was now only 3 points behind, and Christian Danner and John Nielsen equal third, a further 3 points down. From Spa, it was back to France and Dijon. And this time there was a current Grand Prix driver on the grid, because French hero Philippe Alliot decided to have a run in one of Bob Sparshot's marches. But at the front, it was the Rolts again, with this time John Nielsen taking the pole ahead of his teammate Mike Thackwell, who was just a fraction slower. On the second row, Christian Danner, the German, was third quickest. And alongside him, it was a Ferté, with this time Alain a little bit quicker than Michel. So Alain on the outside of row 2, and Michel, impatient to get racing, on the inside of row 3. And the sixth man on the grid was the ever-improving Belgian Thierry Tassin. At the start, it was the Rolts first away, with Nielsen maximising his pole position to lead from Mike Thackwell. The Fertés were third and fourth, Michel leading Alain. Christian Danner was fifth, having made a slightly slow start from his second row grid position. Down the long straight, Christian Danner was setting the pace, and soon he had the two leading Rolts in his sights. Nielsen was still ahead of Thackwell, but the white car in their mirrors was the Germans. The Fertés were fourth and fifth, with Michel leading Alain, and Thierry Tassin was going extremely well in sixth place, and starting to move up. Soon he passed both the Fertés to take 4th place. Behind the Rolts, Christian Danner was getting ever nearer. On lap 10, he passed Thackwell for 2nd place, and a lap later, he was by Nielsen to take the lead. The Marches were able to use a softer compound of Bridgestone rubber than the Rolts, and that was certainly helping not only Danner, but also Thierry Tassin, and before long he was past Thackwell. Pirot was having all sorts of handling troubles, but he recovered from this spin to carry on. Now Tassin was up to 2nd place, and behind the Rolts there was a tremendous 4-car battle for 5th place between French drivers Alain Ferté, Philippe Alliot, Michel Ferté and Briard. But Christian Danner was out on his own. Tassin looked pretty comfortable in 2nd place. Thackwell and Nielsen were battling for 3rd with Ivan Capelli before Capelli's car lost a wheel and he retired. Tassin also dropped out, but it was all clear for Danner to the checkered flag. So a win for Christian Danner and a lucky 2nd place for Mike Thackwell, with his teammate John Nielsen coming home 3rd and Alain Ferté taking 4th place ahead of Dacko and Alliot, who were lapped. The championship points battle was looking closer than ever because Christian Danner was now sharing the lead with Mike Thackwell, both on 30 points, with Pirot only 3 points behind and Nielsen another 2 points down. That certainly made the tall German's victory all the sweeter. From Dijon it was south to Sicily and the very fast Enna circuit round Lake Pergusa. Very fast means trading off cornering downforce for straight-line speed, and several cars had smaller front and rear aerofoils to get the best from a circuit which is basically a flat-out circle with chicanes at intervals. As you would expect in Sicily in July, it was also very hot, but that didn't deter an enthusiastic crowd from coming to see the fun. Mike Thackwell was on pole position, his Rolt wearing more conventional aerofoils than the march of Emanuele Pirot, who was alongside him, and it was Thackwell who led from Pirot at the start. Both Nielsen and Michel Ferté were delayed by an accident at the first corner, and into 3rd place went Lamberto Leone, now driving march number 22. Olivier Griard was 5th behind Christian Danner and ahead of Capelli and Dacko. Into the chicane goes Thackwell with Pirot on his tail. Then the 2 white cars of Leone and Danner. And these 4 pulled away from the rest of the field and started to have their own 4-car battle for the lead. Up into 5th place now came Capelli, ahead of Griard. And still Thackwell led, but still he couldn't shake off the 3 cars pursuing him. Pirot's car quicker down the straight with its smaller wings, but less certain through the corners. Lamberto Leone was obviously much happier in the march than he had been in his Williams, and he was now putting the pressure on Pirot. Before long, he'd put his march into 2nd place behind Thackwell, demoting Pirot to 3rd. Italians always go well in Italy, and Leone set about closing the gap to Thackwell. It didn't take him long. A couple of laps later, the white march came round ahead. It was Leone in the lead, Thackwell in 2nd, and Christian Danner was now up to 3rd, ahead of Pirot. And still these 4 cars disputed the lead, with still Capelli 5th and Griard 6th. Now Danner was up to 2nd, and the Capelli-Griard battle had caught up the leading quartet, so we now had a 6-car battle for the lead. But not so lucky was Juan Manuel Fangio III. He ended up in the fences in his march. Danner still 2nd, but up to 3rd now was Pirot ahead of Thackwell. Fangio decided to call it a day. So Leone 1st, Danner 2nd, Pirot now 3rd, Thackwell 4th, Capelli right on his tail in 5th place, and Griard still 6th. It was a tremendous battle in the Sicilian heat. But now Pirot spun out of third place, leaving a gap behind Leone and Dana. Thackwell came through third, Capelli fourth, Griard fifth, and Pirot was down to sixth at the back of the group. Then Mike Thackwell started to drop back. His engine was overheating. But there wasn't much that Ivan Capelli could do about it, because he stopped when his engine died altogether. So behind Leone and Dana, the battle now was on for third place, and Griard and Pirot both went past the New Zealander. But the next drama hit the leader. Leone went off down the escape road, and in fighting back onto the track, he picked up a piece of waste paper which jammed in his air intake. And on a hot day like this, that can be serious. Nevertheless, the Italian rejoined in second place. Christian Dana was the new leader. Lamberto Leone still in second place, and Mike Thackwell still arguing over third with Griard and Pirot. It was Pirot who had the place, with Griard fourth, and Mike Thackwell hanging on grimly in fifth place, trying to keep his engine as cool as possible. That helped him to catch up with the third and fourth placed men, Pirot and Griard. But Lamberto Leone's engine was now getting very, very hot indeed, and to the consternation of his fans in the crowd, he brought March number 22 in, smoking. His race was run, and the very disappointed Italian was out. So it had all been in vain for Leone, but Christian Dana was still looking good out in front. Pirot was now up to second place, and Mike Thackwell had disposed of Griard and was in a suddenly strong third. Griard was coasting to a halt out on the circuit. His engine had died too. Thackwell ahead of Pirot now. Thackwell ahead of Dana. Thackwell in the lead. Christian Dana's engine was misfiring, it was low on fuel, and Mike Thackwell was going towards the checkered flag to score another win by a few feet from Emanuele Pirot. Once again, Formula 3000 had provided a tremendously exciting race with a tremendously exciting finish, and the gap between the New Zealander and the Italian at the end had been less than 7/10 of a second. Christian Dana spluttered home third, ahead of Tarquini, the Swiss Huyton, and Guido Dacco, who was sixth. And in that heat the champagne didn't get sprayed, it got drunk. So from Sicily, north to Austria, the beautifully scenic Österreich-ring, another very fast circuit. Christian Dana took pole position here, and once again a shower just before the start had everyone guessing as to which tyres to use. In the end, it turned out that slicks were the right choice. Emanuele Pirot was on the outside of the front row. Ivan Capelli, getting his slicks there, was third quickest. And fourth quickest, the Frenchman Philippe Streff in his AGS. The Rorts were back on row 3, with Mike Thackwell fifth quickest and John Nielsen sixth. This race was supporting the Austrian Grand Prix, so Niki Lauda made sure he had a good place to watch. And he saw Christian Dana lead from pole position, but Capelli gets swamped by the rest of the traffic. Up the hill to the first chicane, it was Thackwell into second place, with Streff elbowing Pirot and Nielsen out to go into third place. But unknown to him at this stage, Mike Thackwell had a problem. On the grid, one of his front wheels hadn't been properly tightened up when he changed from wet weather tyres to slicks, and his wheel was loose and was about to be punctured. At the end of lap 1, Christian Dana had quite a lead from Philippe Streff, with Emanuele Pirot third, John Nielsen fourth, but there was no sign of the unfortunate Thackwell. He'd already gone off onto the grass, up the hill, and was making his way back towards the pits with an awful lot of Austrian agriculture in the undertray. So as the mechanics worked on the car, Dana went on his way, Streff in second place. Pirot still holding third. Thackwell's new wheel had been fitted, but as he left the pits, he took the airline with him, and it shot back, hitting the unfortunate Ron Toranak of the Rolt team on the head. Now Dana had Streff breathing down his neck and was fighting to retain the lead. these two having pulled well away from the rest of the field. A new aerodynamic rear undertray had made the AGS very much quicker in a straight line, and that obviously helped him to get a run up to Dana and go alongside and through into the lead going into the Bosch curva. So now it was Streff leading, Dana in second place, and way back Pirot in third. But it was turning into an Italian battle for third place, because up from fifth to fourth, passing John Nielsen, had come Ivan Capelli in his white march, and having demoted the Walt, Capelli was now after third place. Going up the long uphill right-hander, Capelli lined up to attack just as Philipp Streff had attacked Christian Dana, and he went through to take third place at precisely the same spot. Christian Dana, meanwhile, was very anxious to get his lead back from Philipp Streff, but Streff's car had been losing oil. Some of it had got on Christian Dana's visor, and he got way offline at the Jochenrindt curve. Amazingly, the only damage from that enormous spin was a lost end plate on his wing. This one could have been worse. That was Saintin and Griard, but Saintin was very courteous when he got back onto the circuit right in front of Griard. He waved him on before they carried their battle on. Christian Dana got some fresh tyres, but they decided to leave the lost end plate alone on the rear wing, and the German powered back into the race. But now all eyes were on Ivan Capelli, because his tremendous progress up the field had taken him onto the tail of the leader Philipp Streff, and going up the hill he pounced. Breaking late into the chicane, the Italian slotted in front of the Frenchman, and Ivan Capelli was leading. Streff's progress wasn't being helped by the fact that his new Demon rear undertray was coming loose. So Capelli was able to pull away, and leading a Formula 3000 race for the first time, he intended to stay in front. Streff, on the other hand, was being caught and was now passed by John Nielsen, who took number 2 Rolt into second place. It didn't take Nielsen long to get on to Capelli's tail. But over the brow and down to the Jochenrindt curve for the last time, Capelli had the lead, and he kept it to take the race. Perhaps if it had been a lap longer, the story might have been different. Yet again, Formula 3000 had proved itself a very, very close-fought category, with barely half a second between the first two. Lamberto Leone came home third, ahead of Pirot, the unfortunate Streff, and Tassin in sixth place. And Capelli made free with the champagne for his first major race win. After his early stop, Mike Thackwell could only finish 9th, but he still led the Formula 3000 Championship at this stage by 3 points from Pirot, with Christian Dana down to third place now, a further 2 points down. John Nielsen was fourth. A week after Austria, the Formula 3000 circus was at Zandvoort, supporting the Dutch Grand Prix. And once again, Christian Dana was on pole position. Once again, the weather was uncertain, and everyone was on wet weather tyres for the start. John Nielsen was on the outside of the front row in the number 2 Rolt. On the second row, Michel Ferté with his march, and alongside him, the other red and white march of Emanuele Pirro. On row 3, Ivan Capelli, but he was destined not to start the race. And alongside him, Mike Thackwell, not too happy to be right down in 6th place on the grid. At the start, Dana faltered slightly, and a very good start was made by Michel Ferté. And as the field stormed down the long straight into the Tarzan hairpin, it was Ferté from Dana and Nielsen. Michel Ferté led round the back of the pits. Dana was still second, and the Rolts were now third and fourth, with Thackwell establishing himself in 4th place. Unhappily in the pits with a broken differential was Ivan Capelli. At the end of the first lap, it was Ferté from Nielsen and Thackwell, but Dana had dropped to 5th place behind Philipp Streff, and the Swiss Mario Heiten was in 6th place. Out of Tarzan and behind the pits, the battle was on for 3rd place, with Thackwell being attacked on every side by Philipp Streff. But Thackwell's too canny a driver to allow that to unsettle him, and he hung on to the 3rd place with Nielsen 2nd and still Michel Ferté in the lead. But on the long straight, Nielsen attacked, trying to go round the outside. On this slippery circuit, he can't do that, so he chopped across to the inside, and they were wheel to wheel out of Tarzan. Still Nielsen didn't have the lead, still he kept trying. On the inside of Hugenholtz, and this time the door wasn't quite shut because Ferté slid wide, but he still had the lead. Now watch the front wing of the Rolt. Up into the air it goes, and into the pits comes John Nielsen for a new one. So that's allowed Michel Ferté to stay out in front, but now Thackwell and the AGS of Philipp Streff are side by side battling over 2nd place in his mirrors. Thackwell gets the inside at Tarzan and very nearly gets the lead, but Streff fights back. This is Formula 3000 racing at its best. Ferté holding on to the lead, Streff attacking, Thackwell there as well, and next time past the pits and into Tarzan, weaving under braking. Thackwell sneaks up the inside once more, they're almost 3 abreast. Ferté slides wide, but still Ferté leads. Streff is 2nd, and Thackwell seems to be able to do nothing about it, and he's 3rd. And now past the pits this time, they're all up there. Thackwell almost in the pit lane, Streff wheel to wheel, and Streff is going to take the lead at last. Ferté twitching under braking. Thackwell still there in 3rd place. And coming up with a perfect view of all this excitement in the white march, Christian Dana, who's 4th. Streff pulls away a little bit from this excitement. Ferté has his hands full holding off Thackwell, but Thackwell is on the inside round Hugenholtz, and Thackwell is through to 2nd. So it's Streff 1st, Thackwell 2nd, Michel Ferté 3rd, and now the pit stops start. Thackwell is early in for slick tyres because the track is drying. Ferté is in also. Then Philipp Streff brought in the AGS, but his pit stop was to be a slow one because one of the rear wheels jammed and couldn't be removed. Christian Dana's stop, by contrast, was very quick. Briefly, the lead was taken by Saintin, but Thackwell was up there on his new slick tyres, although he had to wave his fist a little bit to move Saintin out of the way. Finally, he elbowed his way through. Thackwell was leading, Saintin in 2nd place, and now in 3rd place, some way behind after his stop, was Christian Dana. Saintin came into the pits for his late stop. But in the closing stages of the race, Dana was up with Thackwell, and as they came up to lap Lamberto Leone, Dana went through, and a surprised Thackwell seemed to be able to do absolutely nothing about it. But Dana nearly fell foul of Leone as they came up to lap him, squeezing through, but Leone slammed the door in Thackwell's face, and as they came up to the checkered flag, Dana had a comparatively comfortable lead, with Mike Thackwell finishing 2nd for Rolt. Philipp Streff got 3rd place after his tardy pit stop. John Nielsen was 4th with his new nose section, with Pirot 5th and Dacco once again 6th. And now just one round remained in the Formula 3000 Championship, the final British round at Donington. And although Mike Thackwell still led the championship table, Christian Dana was now within 2 points of him, which meant that the final round at Donington was going to be all important for the German.
I don't know if I'm feeling optimistic. The car's going well, so I hope I can do well at Donington.
Well, of course, one man very anxious to do well at Donington, the Championship Series leader, Mike Thackwell. But one other man has an outside chance of winning the championship, and that's Emanuele Pirot, in 3rd place in the points table. But after qualifying, the grid positions told a familiar story. Mike Thackwell on pole position, his Ralt teammate John Nielsen on the outside of row 1. On row 2, though, there was a surprise. The Swiss Mario Heiten was third quickest, Christian Danner fourth quickest. At the start, Thackwell was the first to move, but then his car seemed to falter. Heiten went to the left of him, Pirot went to the right, but Pirot and Thackwell collided. And as Pirot spun off the track on the outside, one of Thackwell's front wheels was pointing to the sky. Pirot tried to continue, but his rear left-hand wheel showed that he couldn't. And Mario Heiten came out of it all in the lead. John Nielsen second, Tassin third, Danner fourth, Michel Ferté fifth. And sadly, Thackwell was out, Pirot was out. And now all Christian Danner had to do was score 3 points or more to be champion. But Christian Danner's made of sterner stuff, and he was driving hard. Heiten still the leader. Still in second place, John Nielsen, but Danner starting to put the pressure on. Heiten with his distinctive green wings, Tassin still in third place, Danner there in fourth ahead of Michel Ferté. The Swiss kept the lead, despite all that John Nielsen could do. Tassin well placed, and fifth behind Danner is Philippe Streff. This tremendous battle continued without change of order for the first 10 laps. But then the Belgian Thierry Tassin started to have trouble selecting gears. Danner and Streff poised to pounce, and soon Danner was through into third place and pushing John Nielsen. Heiten still leading, Nielsen still second. But it didn't take long for Christian Danner to find a route past John Nielsen, and soon the White March was in second place ahead of the red and white Ralt and setting off after the White March ahead with its distinctive green wings. Christian Danner knew now that all he had to do was hold his second position to be assured of the Formula 3000 Championship. But he was made of sterner stuff, and soon he had the lead. Heiten was demoted to second. And now Christian Danner was able to dominate the race from the front and win the Formula 3000 Championship as he'd hoped to do by winning at Donington. Mario Heiten was delighted with his second place, his best Formula 3000 finish, and Ivan Capelli took third place from Michel Ferté, with Philippe Streff fifth and Alain Ferté sixth. And for Christian Danner, there was all the congratulation that a new champion deserves from his team, from the BS Automotive setup that had run his march all year. Then on to the winner's rostrum, the laurel wreath, the applause from the crowds, and the kiss from the pretty girl. For Christian Danner, it was the perfect end to a long and hard year, which gave him the championship by just 6 points from an unlucky Mike Thackwell, with Emanuele Pirro in third place on 38 points, 4 points ahead of the other Ralt driver, John Nielsen. But that wasn't quite the end of the Formula 3000 season, because as a sort of end-of-term party, there was an additional non-championship race run far across the world in Curacao. Mike Thackwell's Ralt was on pole position, but he had a mechanical problem when the field was flagged away to do the final warm-up lap, and he had to stay watching with his hand up as they went round on their final reconnaissance of the new and very tight 2.2-mile circuit. Despite all the efforts of the Ralt mechanics, they couldn't coax Ralt number 1 into life. It was some sort of obscure electrical problem. And finally they had to resort to the most old-fashioned method of starting of all, a push. But even that didn't find the answer. So this was destined to be one race that Mike Thackwell wouldn't even be able to start, and his pole position was empty as they lined up with Capelli at the front. And at the green light, Capelli made full use of his advantage. Between the menacing concrete walls, Capelli led from Nielsen, Claudio Langers in the EJR March in third place, and the new champion Christian Danner in fourth place. Guido Dacco was fifth, Alain Ferté sixth, Johnny Dumfries in 7th place ahead of Emanuele Pirro, and Gabriele Tarquini was in 9th place, driving on this occasion a Lola. The new track was proving slippery and bumpy, and out of the chicane, at the end of that first lap, a little twitch from the leader, a big twitch from John Nielsen in 2nd place. And the first victim of the walls was the Swede Slim Borgert. But now Nielsen had got ahead, and let's see a replay of how he managed it, underbraking up the inside of Capelli and putting the Rolt into the lead. Capelli was still there in 2nd place, however, waiting for a mistake from Nielsen. Here's a mistake from the two San Remo March drivers, Aldo Bertuzzi in number 13 and Fulvio Balabio in 14. The hard-working marshals did their best to disentangle them, but then as the leaders came round, they decided it was time to take cover. And now there was a battle royal for 2nd place, because Ivan Capelli had his mirrors full of the well-driven march of Claudio Langes. And while that was going on, there was an accident from Stefano Livio, who clambered over the wall and then had a think about the accident he'd just had. This is what it looked like. But after he'd hit the wall, he was then in turn hit extremely hard by Gabriele Tarquini. Tarquini clambered from the remains of his Lola unhurt. And this is what that bit of the accident looked like. So number 16 and number 21 conclusively out of the race, and number 2, John Nielsen, conclusively at the head of it. This was a long and very gruelling race, because on this tight circuit average speeds were less than 75 miles an hour, and the total race distance was over 1 hour 40 minutes before John Nielsen was able to see the welcome sight of the checkered flag. He won by 20 seconds. And Ivan Capelli took his 2nd place by a more comfortable margin than before from Claudio Langes. The new champion Christian Danner was 4th, Alain Ferté 5th, and Emanuele Pirro in 6th place. So the Formula 3000 teams and promoters could look back on a tremendously successful first year. All 12 races had been close fought and exciting, and the new formula had already fulfilled its aim of proving the potential of future Grand Prix drivers. Before the season was out, Christian Danner was driving for Zakspeed in Grand Prix racing. Philippe Streff was driving for Ligier, taking 3rd place in the Australian Grand Prix. And Ivan Capelli was in the cockpit of a Grand Prix Tyrrell. Truly, Formula 3000 had proved itself the final rung on the ladder to Grand Prix glory.